Okay, video is cancer prevention checklist part 1. I'll do a part 2 in the future. I'll go into more detail on some of the rare stuff, but this one I'm going to go over most of the big important things for reducing your risk of cancer. On the second half of the talk, I'm going to show some slides of my mother's experience with cancer. She lived a long time. Okay, anyways, first thing, most important, no meat. Not one bite. Nothing that comes from an animal. That includes no dairy, no fish, no eggs, nothing from an animal. And here's the reason why. First of all, contains more methionine. Methionine is one of the sulfur-containing amino acids, and part of the metabolism of that is to sulfuric acid. It causes a low-grade metabolic acidosis, produces a tumor environment, the acidic, that favors the cancer, the tumor milieu. In addition, methionine is an essential amino acid needed by cancer cells to grow. Meat also contains more lysine and leucine, and these are associated with increased activation of mTOR. mTOR is a nutrient sensing pathway, and that when it's like a contractor getting ready to build a building, when it has all the building materials, especially these two that it's waiting on, it'll tell the cell to replicate. So it accelerates cell replication, means cell growth, cancer growth. You don't want that. The meat will also increase insulin-like growth factor, which is mitogenic, meaning causes mitosis. You don't want that. In addition, meat increases blood lipids, which increases blood insulin. Insulin is also anabolic. I mean, ILGF is called insulin-like growth factor. So you're adding all these things that make cells want to replicate. Not only is this bad for you in general, it accelerates aging as it speeds up your arrival at the Hayflick limit, the maximum number of cell divisions. Typical somatic body cell can only divide about 60 times. Hayflick was a microbiologist who studied cell division and discovered that they have a limited number of cell divisions because regular non-germ cells, non-stem cells, they don't have a telomerase enzyme, and a chromosome shortens with every cell division, and eventually it starts losing genes that it needs to survive. So anyways, bottom line, no meat, nothing that comes from an animal. That's an important point. According to T. Colin Campbell, the world expert on the relationship between protein and cancer, he said animal protein is the #1 carcinogen in the world, primarily because it's a tumor promoter. So the 3 phases of cancer are: number 1, initiation, which is some type of damage to the cancer cell, getting it to grow faster. Number 2 is a tumor promoter, something that makes it grow faster. And number 3 is metastasis, widespread. All right, so the point being that initiation is most commonly, from my understanding of the literature, due to hypoxia. Okay, it can also be due to carcinogenic mutagens, things that cause mutations. All right, we're going to talk more about that in a different lecture. All right, but the bottom line is meat's bad. It's real bad for increasing cancer risk. Meat-eating populations got a lot more cancer. They eat a lot of meat. All right, no oil. No oil, not one drop. It thickens the blood, so-called blood sludge, which causes less oxygen delivery to tissues, and that increases tissue hypoxia, and that will kill a lot of cells, but it'll also transform some cells. They'll de-differentiate to survive in this hypoxic environment, and they become like a primitive anaerobic bacteria. I actually think that's exactly what it is. And that a cell, life on Earth began with bacteria before there was any oxygen. So they all have glycolysis, the anaerobic pathway for generating energy from glucose, all right? And then I believe the subsequent development of eukaryotic cells, cells with a nucleus. Euc means true or normal, and karyote means a nut, like nucleus. So eukaryote means true nucleus. The bacteria are prokaryote. Pro means before. So before karyote, before nut, before nucleus. So those are the primitive cells, all having anaerobic glycolysis. Then the long story is they ingested a mitochondria, and the mitochondria was now available a couple billion years after life on Earth had started. And that can metabolize oxygen as oxygen became available in the Earth's atmosphere due to photosynthesis of plants. And now the mitochondria, this is some freak occurrence, but this ingestion of a mitochondria that survived inside of a previously anaerobic bacteria enabled metabolism of oxygen. But now with tissue hypoxia, the mitochondria is injured. So the cell is reverting. Sometimes they call it atavistic, or a better word I think is vestigial pathways of just running on anaerobic glycolysis. So the pyruvate at the end of glycolysis, instead of running through Krebs cycle and then going on to oxidative phosphorylation in the mitochondria, it just gets fermented, which means metabolized to lactate, which regenerates NAD. All right, but anyways, we don't need to go into all that. I'll talk about that in other lectures, but the point is no oil, not one drop. Just like Caldwell Esselstyn says, best thing for your heart, No oil, and I mean all oils. You don't need any of these oils. None, zero, nada. And I include no olive oil, none of them. They're all bad for you. Coconut oil, you name it. I think fish oil is bad for you. I wouldn't take any of that stuff. All right. No processed food. In other lectures, I'll go through the details, more explanation of why. This is more of a quick lecture just to tell you the key points of reducing cancer risk. No processed food. Don't eat any processed food. The only processed food I would make an exception for, plain oatmeal. I think that's still a good food, but you don't want anything in it. You don't want the flavored oatmeals. Almost always have MSG and who knows what else in them. Processed food is very high in sodium. For most Americans, they're getting about 80% of the sodium from processed foods. Unless it's organic, even if it's organic, it could have some, but unless it's organic, it's certainly likely sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, and they're often quite bad, those pesticides and herbicides in non-organic food. I don't eat anything that's non-organic. If I was starving to death, would I? Yeah, of course. Okay, and I think fruits and vegetables tend to be pretty good for you, even if they're not organic, but they're better if they're organic. Okay, a lot of processed foods, iron fortified. Most people are iron overloaded. They often contain MSG or MFG, and there's some reason to think those might be a significant problem. That's a topic for a future day. They often have emulsifiers in them. Emulsifiers are things that can merge the aqueous and the lipid phases, so the water and the oily phases, and they can cause leaky guts, the point. And leaky guts associated with increased systemic inflammation, which is thought to increase cancer risk. Okay, other unknown chemicals potentially in all these processed foods. Who knows what's in them? Try to keep your blood ferritin below 100 if you had cancer. I think if you don't have cancer, it's reasonable to try to keep it below 200. But if you do have cancer below 100, and that's not as well known. I'm not an expert in that, so I wouldn't call that a hard solid number. I might want that lower. I've heard some people say you should have your blood ferritin between 25 and 50. Now, I'm not sure about that. I can tell you mine's about 140. It used to be 240, and I donated some blood, plus I avoided iron for years now. I got it down to 140, but that's where I'm at on that. I didn't really like donating blood, even though there are reasons why it can be a good thing. Whole house carbon water filter, that's a super important thing. You really want to avoid these chemicals, especially these estrogenic chemicals. They're carcinogenic in a lot of ways. They can be growth promoters. There's problems with estrogen hormones for a lot of different types of cancer, especially prostate, breast, and uterus, endometrial cancers. They also have a tendency to increase the risk of being obese, fat, all that stuff that you don't want. It's even nice, too, if you can get a reverse osmosis water filter in the kitchen. That's a topic. I get separate lectures on water filtration. Chlorine in excessive amounts is not good. It's a negatively charged ion in the blood. In excessive amounts, it'll displace your bicarbonate and lead to a low-grade metabolic acidosis, which favors cancer growth. F- is also not something good for you. It's nice to remove that with an RO filter, or better yet, have well water that doesn't contain it. And there's a lot of stuff in water. Again, topic for a separate lecture, but at least have a carbon water filter. Avoid estrogenic chemicals. They're in like almost every cosmetic product. You don't need deodorant. You say, hi, how you doing? You don't smell each other's armpits. We talked about that in a lecture. I got a lecture called Female Problems. I go through all this estrogenic stuff. Basically, be a minimalist. You don't need to be rubbing moisturizers, cosmetics, and soaps and all this stuff. I don't use any shampoo. You don't need this stuff. I have zero cosmetic products in my bathroom. Zero. I only have one bar of soap, which is one of those translucent one with the fewest ingredients. I don't even think you need to use a dishwasher. I made a lecture about minimalism. You don't even need a dishwasher. I mean, I rinse my bowl off. If you don't cook with oil, it's real easy to just rinse your bowl off. And you don't need the whole dishwasher detergent stuff on your plates. You don't need laundry detergent. I just wash it in hot water and then dry it. That's enough. That's a very American thing. Oh, I need more chemicals. BS, It's not like, they're doing so well. Americans do not age well. I can assure you, I've been a doctor 30 years. Americans do not age well. So you don't want to be the average American. No added sodium. Sodium is a vasoconstrictor, so it'll clamp down on the arteries, decrease blood supply to the tissues, and that can cause tissue hypoxia. That can lead to, contribute to a Warburg effect of tissue hypoxia and causing mitochondrial damage. Subsequently, that leading to transformation into cancer and anaerobic, like bacteria-like function of the food. Be surprised, fermented foods are associated, especially with increased gastric cancer. It might be because of all the sodium they contain. No alcohol, not one drop. Be surprised how much that increases the risk of breast cancer and worse prognosis. No tobacco, not one puff, no any type of tobacco whatsoever. Okay. Okay, manage stress. Cortisol weakens your immune system. It's your immune system that protects you from cancer. So you want a high-functioning immune system to protect you from cancer. Cancers will spread cancer cells in your blood, so having a good immune system goes around and removes them all right? Catecholamines, another hormone increased, a couple of hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline increased with stress. They can even potentially function as siderophores. Sidero meaning iron, phore is to transfer, hand something over. So they can transfer iron. I know they do it to bacteria, increasing infections. They could potentially do it to cancer. I'm not positive about that, but I think so. No caffeine. Caffeine's a stress equivalent. It increases the same hormones, cortisol and catecholamines. Only eat organic foods. That'd be my recommendation. Okay, let's see here. Oops. Sorry about that. Here we go. All right. This is cancer to-do list. You want to exercise. When you exercise, just like you got veins with valves in your legs and your leg muscles contract that moves the blood up to your heart, you got lymphatic vessels all over your body with valves. And when you contract your muscles, you move that lymph flow along, and that gets your white blood cells circulating more rapidly, more extensively through your body to remove cancer cells. That's what you want. Exercise improves the function of natural killer cells, and those are the ones that remove cancer cells from your blood. Okay, you don't want stress too. That stress causes platelet activation, and the platelets kind of glom onto the shed cancer cells in the blood, and they kind of hide them from the immune system. So that's another reason you want them. Animal protein also decreases function in natural killer cells a little bit. You don't want that. Okay, attitude of gratitude. Make a list of all the things you're grateful for, and you'd be surprised. Everybody's got life screwed up in a lot of ways, but you'd be surprised how many good things you have in your life. And that attitude of gratitude, it lowers your stress level. So it increases parasympathetic autonomic nervous system, PANS, and that helps the body to heal. Your cortisol is lower. Your immune system functions better. So it's a good thing. Have some purpose in your life, whatever it is, to help someone, to help some good cause, something genuinely good that you care about and you involve yourself in. And somehow, I think the body releases endorphins and other life-sustaining chemicals when it sees that you're doing something good. There's a guy, he's a Harvard psychiatrist. He wrote a book called The Triumph of Experience and Healthy Aging. And the guy, what he said, this Harvard psychiatrist, is that the person's social skills and social support system and all that was the most important variable in how long people live. He felt it was more important than cholesterol and stuff. And, it's a little bit, on the one hand, the guy's a psychiatrist, so he's going to be biased towards the social aspect of things compared to the biochemical aspect of things because he doesn't know the biochemical stuff so well. But he still had some good points. He inherited several lifetime longitudinal studies. Okay, and I know that's true. I mean, you can feel it in yourself. It's something like your brain says, keep you alive, you're doing good. Religion really helps people a lot. The modern world tries to pretend it doesn't need religion, but most of the modern people who say that, they all stink. Religion increases hope, increases optimism. It answers the metaphysical questions of the life. What am I doing here? What is my purpose in life? What is the meaning of my life? It adds meaning and purpose to a person's life, and it makes them happier, and it can help guide them to make good choices in their life. My mom, for example, when she had cancer, she made a religious pilgrimage to Medjugorje. She was only expected to live 2 years, 3 at the most, and she ended up living about 11. So I'll talk about that in the second half of this talk a little bit. Some of the things she did, I think, that helped her live so long. And I'm the one who screwed up. I didn't know about nutrition. I was really young at the time. If I had known about nutrition, I maybe could have got her to live longer. Sunshine increases vitamin D, and it'll increase the good vitamin D3. It's the activated form, which you really want. It does a lot of good things. If possible, get your vitamin D from the sun. That's so much better than getting it from a pill. McDougall doesn't even give pills to anybody unless they're institutionalized, can't go outside types. Okay, sleep. And milk is terrible for vitamin D. Think about it. Milk's got tons of calcium, which blocks the activation of vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 activation helps prevent cancer, okay? So you're blocking that activation by taking all that calcium. Plus, the animal protein also lowers the amount of activation of vitamin D3 a little bit, so you don't want that. T. Colin Campbell talks about that quite a bit in his book, China Study, which is a great book. Okay, sleep. You want to get your sleep. The body heals itself, especially during sleep, so get your sleep. All right, I got a lecture on that separate. Go over old photos. Sometimes going through all your old photos, the ones that cheer you up, put them on display in your room. Sometimes going for a walk in nature can cheer you up. Biophilia. You do whatever makes you feel better. By the way, as far as religion improving health, there's a good book on that by, it's like The Healing Power of Faith by Harold Koenig, MD. He did a whole bunch of research on that. And religious people are dramatically healthier than other people. Take a look at the Seventh-day Adventists. They're the longest lived people in the world, even though they live in kind of a crappy place, Los Angeles, okay? And they eat healthy. And, Ellis Wareham, he's the vegan surgeon who lived to be around 100. He, said it's their way of life. Even he felt as much or more so than their diet and nutrition stuff. Read books about how to get better from cancer. Read survivor stories. I think Radical Remission by Kelly Turner is really good. She studied all these people who survived metastatic cancer and tried to take from them what did they do that seemed to be common things that kept them alive, made them healthier. Watch videos about how to get better from cancer. Okay, I'm going to talk now a little bit about my mom because her story with metastatic cancer I think can be helpful to other people. And it'll start out right in her beginning, but you'll be surprised how much of this can relate to other people. So my mom was born in Puerto Rico. She was pretty. She was the queen of her little town in 1949 in Puerto Rico. My mom was very poor growing up. And this is no joke. My mother grew up in a barn. And you would say, how did your mother grow up in a barn? And it'll become clear in just a moment. She did get a scholarship to University of Chicago. She got her master's degree from University of Chicago. That's her with one of her friends. Her friend's actually really funny. He talks a lot. Okay. And here's a family picture, and it'll make a little more sense here. So here was my mom. Back when she was young, here's my father. They're visiting Puerto Rico. She's smoking a cigarette. My dad smoked too. Almost everybody smoked back in those days. Stupid. They didn't know any better. Here's her mom in the back, Carmen. And the story is my mom's mom was a great lady. Her husband was a genius, but a little bit crazy, a little bit of a jerk. And so what happened is her husband, he was known, this is my grandfather, he was known as the genius of the island of Puerto Rico. He was a merchant marine, and he was sort of famous for being fluent in 6 languages, and he could look at a column of numbers and all add them up in his head. He was known as just being absolutely brilliant. Okay, so anyways, though, what happened is his wife, Carmen, she found out that he had another family on another island because as a merchant marine captain, he would sail around different places. And so she went apeshit banana. She went crazy. And she did all kinds of things and was pretty nasty to him. And yeah, obviously, he was pissing her off, but maybe she overreacted. It kind of reminds me of a Tiger Woods episode when his wife found out what he was doing. Okay, but anyways, this guy had a family on another island. She went crazy, chased him out of the house, and he abandoned her. He abandoned his family. He never came back. So that's a very sad, unfortunate thing. But, so then they had a cousin who owned a barn, who owned a farm, and they lived in a barn. My mom literally grew up in a barn, her and her brothers and sisters, okay? But she was so poor, my mom, when she was young, she'd walk to school. She only had one pair of shoes. She'd walk to school barefoot because she didn't want to get her shoes dirty and then put her shoes on, all right? But this is how smart they are. The oldest boy, Eddie, was super nice, and he went and joined the military, and he made money to give back to the family because they were so poor. They tried to get some poor jobs, which they had. They worked in a movie theater, selling the tickets at the cashier's register, and it was kind of funny. When I was a kid and I'd go to a movie with my mom, she would always create mischief. She'd always tell us to lie about our age. Say you're 11, when I was 12 or something. I go, no, Mom, I'm not going to do it. She goes, do it, say it. I don't have any money. If you don't say you're 11, we can't go. I go, no, Mom, I'm not doing it. And it's all stupid, but it was funny. Whenever my mom was around, everything was always funny. So anyways, her older sister right here, she graduated first in a medical school class. Actually, she had been working as a physics teacher, professor, but her husband cheated on her. And she got pissed off and decided she wanted to go to med school. And then she sent some of her kids to live in our house. And that was typical of my mom. My mom was always adopting people, okay? She was like the super nicest, funniest lady you'll ever meet in your life. Here's her other brother's an anesthesiologist. Her other sister's got a PhD in nutrition. And the other brother was an accountant. And that's the point I'm making. They were as poor as a person could be. They were so poor, they worried about starvation. They lived in a barn, okay? And I just tell you that because there's this kind of attitude in the United States that if you're poor, you're screwed and there's nothing you can do. Don't get me wrong. Poor people do have problems. But what I'm trying to say is, man, they worked hard in school. They valued education. Carmen, cracked the whip and got them all to do their homework in school. And they studied on their own. And, I think also because, Grandpa was a brilliant guy, they had that component going for them. But anyways, it's kind of an interesting story. Now here's a picture of my mom with my dad. He's from Ireland, and I jokingly call him Beauty and the Beast. He had been a boxing champion, so he's a real tough guy. My mom was a really good athlete too. She was a tennis champion. She swam for University of Chicago. She played on the tennis team. She was a doubles champion at the tennis club. Here she is with my dad at the tennis club. And I think that helped her a lot with exercise. Here's one of her sister's kids. He came and lived with us for a whole bunch of years while she was going through med school and residency. He's like an older brother to me. Here's a typical thing too. Here's another friend of our family. This girl's family was having problems. My mom just adopted her. She lived at her house for a bunch of years. And I'll tell you, these people love my mother so much, they would kiss her feet. They would get on their knees and kiss my mother's feet. That's how much they love my mother. For good reason. Oh, then there's another girl. This girl, Lisa, she was sort of from the wrong side of the tracks at the tennis club. The other women looked down on her. They're kind of stuck up and snotty. My mom said, Lisa, you play with me. And they won the doubles championship together. That's a typical thing my mother would do. And then that girl, her family was having problems. My mom said, Lisa, you come live with me as long as you want. She lived at our house for a couple of years too. Okay. And here's kind of a silly picture of my mom. We were somewhere, I think we were in California. She was always cracking jokes. And that's what I mean. To be around her was always fun. You don't want to get in a car with her, though, because then she would take you to her. She goes, well, we're going to come with me. She's saying to me, come with me to the grocery store because I have to, so you can carry the groceries for me. You're a young, strong boy. You carry the groceries for me. And I'm like, okay, Mom, but just fast. I got stuff to do today. And then she go, well, first I have to go to my friend's house. Then I have to go to my other friend's house. And you're like, oh, crap. So we call that the pulling Olga. If my mom got you in the car, she'd make you, nobody would want to get in the car with her because she'd always make you go to her friend's house and, you spend the whole day with her. She just wanted to be with her kid, okay? But the kid's got other stuff to do. And this is a silly picture, but the point is she was always joking around. She was funny. She was kind of like Roseanne Barr, but in a nice way. I mean, she wasn't mean. Roseanne Barr can be pretty mean, but she can be pretty funny. My mom was always funny. Not mean. Here's a whole bunch of things she did. She was like on the president of the hospital auxiliary. She was on the board of directors of the local orphanage. She's a minister of care at church. She was very religious. She's a tour guide at the Art Institute. She's a tour guide at the Frank Lloyd Wright Studio. She was on some international tennis board. She was champion of the doubles tennis at the tennis club. She ran the whole family because my dad made enough money. She didn't have to work. She just did what she wanted, and she did a lot of good things. And she ran the whole family. And I've seen a lot of modern young wives, they're so busy working that they don't have time to do as much for their families. It's just a fact. After she was diagnosed with cancer, she made a religious pilgrimage to Medjugorje by herself. I think my dad had to work and he couldn't go with her. I don't know if he went with her, but I think he didn't. And then here's an amazing story. It just kind of tells you what she was like. One of her grandchildren was born in a very complicated situation. The mother, she didn't know any better. She had been in a hot tub late in her pregnancy and her water broke. She didn't know it. It got infected. She went into septic shock. We all thought she was going to die. She was hypotensive on a ventilator. The baby was also born in septic shock. I was called over to the hospital to make a decision on, how to manage the baby in critical care and septic shock. He was over at this, semi-university hospital, and the pediatricians in the neonatal intensive care unit are running a code blue on him, and the code blue went on for like 2 hours. And I'm there, luckily, with a friend of the family, Pat Wall. She's a lawyer, smart guy. And, I finished my fellowship at Harvard, and, they wanted my medical opinion. And the reality is I don't know much about kids. They're little like outer space aliens compared to, working on adults for surgery. So, things weren't looking good. We all thought the baby was going to die. The pediatricians came out to talk with me and Pat Walsh, and he says to me, they're telling me, well, we could transfer the baby to the children's hospital, local children's hospital, and they can put him on ECMO. endocorporeal membranous oxygenation, which means a heart-lung bypass machine. It's kind of similar to the idea of putting like a open heart cardiac surgery patient on bypass for the operation. And that's a big thing to do. And we all thought this baby's going to be born, potentially brain dead, stroked out, you name it. We don't know. But kids are also quite resilient. So I spoke to the baby's father and I said, we don't know. Kids sometimes are real resilient and they do well, but there's a pretty high chance this kid's going to be born mentally retarded, stroked out, all kinds of things. We don't know. And the baby's father said, give him a chance. He said, yep, we'll do it. And it was actually the lawyer who really, the lawyer friend of the family who really came through. He said to me, Pete, I don't know much about medicine, he says, but I know a lot about people. These pediatricians at the local pediatrician hospital he's being managed at, he goes, they're scared. They don't think they can save this baby. He says, send him to the children's hospital. That's this kid's chance. I was like, okay, he's right. And so we sent the baby to children's hospital. The baby's in the intensive care unit on a ventilator. By this time, by the way, my mom had metastatic lung cancer. She had widespread lung metastases. She's coughing up blood. And she brought a cot. She moved into the intensive care unit with the baby. The baby's mother couldn't be with the baby. And the kid's on heart-lung bypass. They're doing needle sticks on him, foot sticks on him to draw blood all day long and stuff. And it's real painful. And, the child, of course, I'm sure is stressed out to the max. So she's holding the baby's hand. I love you. I'm with you. I love you. You're going to be okay. She's got her little statue of St. Jude, the patron saint of helpless causes. She's praying to St. Jude. She's got a picture of Padre Pio. He's the priest who became a saint with the stigmata on his hands and his feet and whatnot. And she's praying to the saints. And she's rubbing, baptized holy water on the kid and stuff. And, here's what I think happened. My mom, being present with that baby for 2 weeks in the ICU, lowered the baby's stress level so his body could heal. And she had to hide, she's coughing up blood and when covering it up in tissue paper, throwing it in the garbage and then burying it with more tissue paper so the nurses don't find out because she's afraid they would kick her out of the hospital. She was pretty sick herself. But, and the rest of us, we had to work. I mean, this was a long time. It was at least 2 weeks. This kid was in the ICU on a ventilator and then even longer still in the hospital. And she was with that kid nonstop, 24/7, and she saved that baby's life. And the kid, by the way, did fine. The kid was very physically fit, real smart, went on to be an honor student, all that stuff, and a good athlete, all that stuff. So we got lucky that the kid came out of it so well. My mom saved that baby's life. And this was at a time when she already had metastatic cancer. I mean, in this whole thing, I'm the one who screwed up because I was a young doctor at the time. And at that time in my training and knowledge, I just thought, well, you send the patient to the best specialist in their area and then, whatever happens, happens. And her oncologist actually did a good job. I mean, she was thought to be dead in 2-3 years, and she lived to be about 11. I wish I had known about all this nutrition as a way to supplement the other cancer care she got, because I maybe could have kept her alive. Because, now when I see some of these low-fat vegans, they're alive, 30 years later after having metastatic cancer. Not that everybody gets that lucky, but, I really wish I had known all this stuff before. I might have had a chance to save her longer. I did what I could to help her based on what I knew at the time. But anyways, hope this information was helpful to you.